Welcome back from last week's segment of Two Men and a Baby.
Yeah.
And welcome
TV show, right?
back to the press box.
Hey, 2.5 Men, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what that was. I laughed so hard watching your son crying, just looking at Ken, and Ken just like, I'm sorry. Ah! That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was funny. Well, that's funny because he smiled first.
Yeah, no,
Ken was like, how you doing? He's like, don't touch me.
It seemed like they were getting along really good at first, and then I think it was just too much Ken time. Too much Ken. Yeah. Too much Ken for sure.
My son handled it pretty well. Pretty happy with that. Maybe he's got a future in TV.
Yeah, he might. You know, he handled his first time on TV with a lot of grace.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Under the bright lights. Anyway.
So we've got a lot to get into. Like, no Super Bowl, no professional sports of any kind this week. This is going to be strictly local stuff. We had a ton of stuff. We had a ton of stuff happen this weekend. We have a ton of stuff to look forward to with all the basketball playoffs coming up. We're going to preview as many of those games as we can for you. We're shooting this on a Tuesday, so we've got prelim games tonight. But before we do that, let's just jump in real quick and talk a little bit about some of the things that Zach and I both covered last weekend. We're going to start quickly with KVAC track. We had a lot of that going on down at Bowdoin in Brunswick. We had a few KVAC champions to rattle off here really quickly. First of all, congratulations to the Belfast boys. They won the KVAC track championship. They won that with 99 points, and the girls finished second to Winslow with 96 points. We had a handful of Belfast kids. We didn't have any Oceanside, Madomic, or Camden KVAC champions. But for Belfast, we had a bundle of them. We had Leah Frazee in the pole vault, Lily Mitchell in the triple jump, June Robertson McIntyre in the 55-meter and the 200-meter.
That's two girls basketball athletes right there.
That's right. That's right. And Jack Hansen at the 55-meter, the pole vault, and the long jump. They all won individual championships. And obviously the Belfast boys and girls track as a team did very well. They'll be moving on to the States, which is this coming weekend, which I believe that is in Lewiston.
Yeah.
Now we've got track out of the way. We're gonna bounce back and forth. First thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk a little bit about the state cheering competition. This was last weekend at the Augusta Civic Center. Madomic Valley girls, they finished third. Herman finished first. Ellsworth second. These are typically the three teams that are always, at the end. They're the last three teams seemingly always standing. Zach, you were there. It was a tough week for the Madomic cheering team. Why don't you kind of walk us through what their week was like and what you saw at the States?
Well, you wrote the story of I forget Molly.
Molly Taylor.
Molly Taylor fell and broke her leg trying to get out of her car, I think, and slipped on some ice, which is awful in its own right, and especially a week before States when they've won KVACs.
Days before.
Yeah, days before. Yeah. They won KVACs and then they won the regionals, and you're thinking, Madomic's got a hell of a shot to win States here,
right.
For the first time in a while, because they've won KVACs.
First time ever. They've never won a state championship.
They win all these regional and KVAC titles, and they get to States, and they finish behind Herman or Ellsworth or somebody by 2 points or something.
Right.
But when I talked to Heather, their coach, and she said that they had to rework the whole routine. They had to change everything up because of safety concerns with their other stunt team that they had. So they basically just pulled those kids out and just ran with, I think it was like 6, 7, 8 kids.
They had 7 kids. I was talking to Rachel Core, their assistant coach, and she said that you can, to have 7 kids, you can still score points with one stunting unit. But if you have more than 7, then you have to have 2 stunting units. And Molly Taylor was such an integral part of that base for that other stunting unit that they went through a lot of hours of practice and everything, and they kind of just came to the conclusion like, this is a safety issue. We got to pull some of these kids off the mat, which is really, really unfortunate. I mean, and the fact that they still finished third.
That was amazing.
With just 7 kids.
When I watch the routine, and you're watching it now because we have video of it, you can't even tell that they had to change everything up. It was just so well done. They're so in sync with one another. I mean, it goes to show the coaching that they've had over these, this span of years where they've been dominant. I mean, they have great athletes too, and the Madomic Riverhawks cheering team has won 9 straight bus line titles, so they have a great feeder program into that program as well. And like you said, to still finish third, I didn't expect them to be that high, and they only finished a couple points behind Ellsworth and Herman for the state title. So they almost pulled it off, which would have been an unbelievable story in itself.
And the other tough thing to kind of swallow if you're a Madomic cheering fan is, they had 3 seniors. Molly was one of them. And you look at this, and in the other regional, Ellsworth unseated Herman.
Yeah.
I mean, Herman is dominant. Herman wins every single year. So Ellsworth beating Herman in the regional, it makes you feel as a cheer fan like, if there was a year for Madomic to pull this off, I mean, like, Ellsworth knocking Herman off in the regional, maybe Madomic could make this happen. And then just days before the competition to have that happen, it was devastating.
Yeah,
devastating.
It was awful. And I think if Madomic had their full full squad. And
They would have had a
their
real look
routine,
at it.
I think they probably would have won. I
Yeah.
honestly think they would have won because they were just great, and it's just a bad stroke of luck at the most inopportune time.
Yeah,
It's
but
the only way to paint it.
they've won 9 straight regional championships and 7 of the last 9 KVAC championships. So it's and they're going to be back. I mean, they're only
Yeah,
losing
it's true.
3 seniors, Molly Taylor being one of them. So I mean, they've got a young group right now.
And then girls coming up too.
And girls coming up too. I mean, like they are the epitome of they don't rebuild, they reload.
Yeah.
They've never gotten over that hump of winning a state title. They've gotten so close so many years.
But-
So that could certainly be happening down the pike. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to think eventually these all these Herman girls are gonna
They're going to graduate or something.
they're
yeah.
going to
Go
stop
away.
being good at some point, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a
Let's-
little bit about. We got wrestling. Let's talk.
Let's do swimming first.
All right, let's talk swimming. You were at the KVACs in Bath
It's in
on
Bath,
Friday
yeah.
night.
If you've ever been to the Bath YMCA, it's a hellish place to park because there's no parking. But there's actually like a little school that abuts the parking lot there, and you can walk. There's a little walkway, but you can't get to that school from the main road. So you have to take all these little side roads, and there's like a caravan of like 7 cars.
You
I
get
was
like
in.
an Uber to drop you off at the
Basically,
front door.
but there was plenty of parking there, and it's a Friday night, so you weren't going to get towed, which was nice. But anyway, back to KVA swimming. We have Camden, Belfast, and athletes from Oceanside, Madomic, and Mount View there.
Independence. Yeah.
Independence, yeah. Camden girls won the KVAC title. Camden also had a couple of kids on the boys and girls sides finished first for KVAC titles. Connor O'Farrell was first in the boys 100-meter freestyle. Sadie Woodruff was first in the girls 100 breaststroke, and the boys 400 freestyle relay finished first as well in their event. And in Belfast, the boys won the KVAC title. So 2 Midco squads taking home KVAC titles on either side, boys and girls. Fletcher Mariner was the only Belfast athlete, and he won the boys 100-meter freestyle. So he was the only one to finish first. And the second-place finishers were everywhere. We would be here all day if we had to list all the second-place finishers between Camden, Belfast, and everybody.
The good news is if we don't get to your particular kid or your particular school, you can see all of these
Yes.
stories that we spent all weekend writing on knox.villagesoup.com or waldo.villagesoup.com. And all of the results from all of these events are all there. Everything's spelled out chapter and verse. We're just kind of trying to give you the highlights and kind of give you the gist of kind of what happened. We'll talk quickly about wrestling as well. I was at the after I went to track on Saturday, I was at the Class A North Regional Wrestling Championships, and that was in Rockport. And the Camden boys, the Camden wrestling team, rather, not just the Camden boys, won the Class A North Regional Championship and won it in their home gym. That's pretty damn cool.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, that's the first regional championship they've won since 2014. Camden, they're a very, very successful wrestling program over many, many years, but it's been a little drought for them since they've won a regional championship. 5 years is a long time for them, but they're coming off a KVAC championship and a regional championship, and now this weekend they've got states, and that's going to be at Coney in Augusta on Saturday. They had a bundle of kids with regional championships. Let's see, we had Noah Lang and Ian Henderson. They both won regional championships for Camden.
No surprise there.
At the 145 and 138 pound weight
Great
classes.
wrestlers.
And Noah Lang, he got his 200th career victory.
Yeah, that's
at the
incredible.
regionals.
And he still has states to go, so he'll be over 200.
I haven't confirmed this yet, but that might be, if it's not, I mean, unless we're talking about Tim Boach, that might be one of the highest, wrestling win totals for a Camden student athlete. So don't quote me on that. I haven't heard back from the coach to confirm that yet, but obviously that's a big thing for him. And Devin Hutchison, he also got his 100th career win. And those are the only 2 that got regional championships, but they qualified 9 kids for the state championship. So we had Eric Andrews, Dawson Allen, and Josh Saucier. They were all second place finishers at 106, 132.
It's top 4, right? Make it.
Yes, the top 4 across the board, they'll make it and set up the brackets. And let's see, Devin Hutchison, he was third at 113. Henry Ferris, Christina Kelly, and Justin Seacott all wrapped up 4th place finishes as well. So they're all state bound.
What's impressive about that as well is Henry Ferris is only a freshman. He won the state title in middle school last year as an 8th grader. And Christina Kelly, it was her first year wrestling in high school, and she's made states. And she's probably going to make states for the girls because the girls have their own state championship.
That's right.
wrestling
Next
well.
week, next
She
Wednesday.
could possibly be a double state champion if all the cards fall right.
Yeah, I think it'd be tough to say that Christina's going to win the state championship in the in the mixed.
But you never know.
She could certainly win it in the girls, no question. I mean, she finished 4th at the regionals. So obviously she's going to have a tough road ahead of her.
Yeah.
Probably having to face one of the top seeded wrestlers for either the North or the South.
She made it. That's
But
impressive
still,
in itself.
that-
She's a great athlete in general.
No, she is, and
Yeah.
I believe her father also is the middle school wrestling coach for Lincolnville, or like he's got some. He has so she's had some background in wrestling, but this is her first time taking the mat for the Windjammers.
Well, and the Camden wrestling coach Patrick Kelly's her uncle too.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So she's got plenty of ties in there, and like it's great first season for her. Class B South, obviously, we also had a bunch of kids do well down in Freiburg. That was we had Mount View's Mark Ward and Zack Ward, brothers, double champions basically at 145 and 138 for Mount View. We also had Nathaniel Fuller finish second and Emma Fonger finish fourth. So they're all heading to states, and states are going to be at Mattanocook and Lincoln this weekend. For Madomic Valley, they finished second overall as a team with 143 points. Mount View finished fifth, Oceanside 10th. But the Madomic boys, they had Eli Miller and Eric Benner each get individual championships at 160 and 220. They also qualified Gavin Redinger, Josh McDougall, Marshall Sawyer, Brady Carter, Amos Hinckley, and Tyler Cox. So they're going to have a big team, and the more kids you qualify for state, Zach, I mean, the more kids you have a chance to accumulate points, the more chance you have a chance to win that elusive team state championship.
Yeah, I would think this year we're probably going to have 5, 6, maybe 7 state champions between Class A and B. I mean, you look at Noah Lang, he won last year. He's almost a lock to win it again this year in 152 pounds. You look at, let's see, who we have from Madomic. Eric Benner and Eli Miller. Miller won it last year. Benner has 1 loss on the year. Look at Mark and Zach Ward from Mount View. Mark's a junior. Zach's only a sophomore. So those two guys have really been going at it for a couple years now. And it wouldn't surprise me to see that many state champions.
One of the interesting things about Eric Benner from Madomic Valley is KVACs, he had to wrestle 4 matches to win that KVAC championship. Do you know how many matches he had to win his regional? 1. He got 2 byes, and then he got an injury default into the championship round, and then won his regional championship match 3-0.
A little resting before the states.
Yeah, hey, just keep it loose. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to work too hard to win them all. But it's kind of interesting. Like, he had to get 4 wins for the KVACs, and then just 1 win technically to get that regional championship. So we got a lot of kids. We also have Alex Fogarty for Oceanside, and I don't have it written down, but I believe there was one other Oceanside wrestler who also qualified. Again, that's on knox.villagesweep.com, so take a look at that as well. So Oceanside, even though they only had 4 kids there, I mean, they scored 34 points, and they were 10th among 13, 14 teams.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've only got 4 kids and you're scoring, reasonably high, I mean, that's that's obviously a big boost for them.
And Fogarty's a past state champion too.
Yes, he is, and he finished second in this regional. And he's definitely a favorite to win a state championship for Oceanside, no question. So I think we've touched on pretty much everything short of
basketball.
So let's do that.
Yeah, let's
talk some basketball.
Yeah.
We're shooting this on a Tuesday, so this is prelim night for the girls. So Zach and I both have games that we're hitting tonight. Zach, let's start with your game. You're going to have the Oceanside girls hosting MCI. Just to kind of give you guys a brief recap. I mean, these 2 teams, Oceanside beat MCI twice this season, 42-28 on January 17th, and then an overtime win February 1st in Rockland. So, I mean, the old cliche is it's tough to beat a team 3 times.
Yep.
But I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on what to maybe expect in this game? These 8-9 matchups, they're always really competitive battles.
Yeah, they really are, and you have to wonder what kind of Oceanside team you're going to get, because you get the Oceanside team that almost knocked off Herman at home. Herman is a top seed. And then Waterville, they almost beat twice. Once at home, and they lost by 1 in the waning seconds at Waterville. And Waterville's undefeated on the year. They're like a top 3 seed in B North. So you have to wonder which Oceanside team you're going to get. Are you going to get the team that plays well up to their competition, or are you going to get the team that maybe overlooks MCI a little bit, looks ahead a little bit? Well, maybe we can play MDI up in Bangor in the quarterfinals. But I think, like you said, it's tough to beat a team 3 times. But I think Oceanside will win tonight. I think they will beat MCI, especially because they're at home. If they went to Pittsfield, even though they beat them in Pittsfield 42-28 back on January 17th, I think they would win there, but I think it'd be a little bit closer. So I guess we'll have to see, but I think Oceanside comes out with the win. But Oceanside this year, they were 7-11 with 11 games decided by 10 points or less. And in those games, they were 3-8. So the ball hasn't really bounced their way.
It was a lot of tough luck losses in a lot of 1, 2, 3 possession games.
But they have a lot of kids that can score. You look at Hope Butler, Molly Gould down low, Sarah Dorr's a big body down low in the post, Chloe Jones, and then not to mention Rachel Joyce, Grace Woodman. They can both hit threes like it's nobody's business.
It's funny.
If they get hot, they could actually make a run in the tournament, and I could see that happening. I could see them beating MCI tonight and going on the road, or not going on the road, but going up to Bangor and beating MDI, and then they either play Old Town or Winslow. And if everything falls right, almost like for the boys a couple years ago, they could potentially be in the regional finals. Now, that's a long way off.
It's funny you mentioned about how Woodman and Joyce can hit threes, because in that overtime win over MCI, Rachel Joyce, she led Oceanside in that game with 19, 6 3-pointers in that game. Sydney Farrar and Sarah Linkletter each had 20 for MCI. But what's interesting is you look back at the previous game, and Sydney Farrar had 4 points and Linkletter had 0.
Yeah.
I think like Farrar and Linkletter are a big thing, a big duo that they need to kind of shut down. And I talked to Jim Leonard, who's the former AD at Oceanside, now the AD at MCI, and I asked him, well, if you're MCI's coach, what's the key? What do you really need to do? And he said, without even questioning, he said, we have to shut down Hope Butler. You know what I mean? She's the one that kind of runs the show. I mean, she distributes the ball. I mean, she had 9 in that overtime game and 10 in that game at MCI. That's going to be a big part of it. And I talked to Sam Bragg as well, the Oceanside coach, and she said they need to take care of the ball, limit turnovers, get good looks at the hoop, and try to generate some second chance opportunities. So if they can do some of those things, I kind of agree with you. I think that, in these 9-8 matchups, a lot of times it's a flip of the coin, and it's like who's got the home court, who's got that little extra juice flowing. And I think it's probably going to be the Oceanside girls tonight.
Yeah,
if we had to make a prediction.
Going back to what you said about Hope Butler, when I was at the Madomic and Oceanside girls game to end the regular season, Butler got in trouble with two fouls in the first half, and she sat for most of the second quarter, and that's when Madomic Valley went on like a 23-9 run, and they really just kind of opened it up, and Oceanside never really recovered from that game. And once they lost Butler, they didn't really have anybody that could handle the ball as well as Butler could and kind of run the offense. So I think if Butler has to stay out of foul trouble, and if she has a big game, then Oceanside's going to win pretty easily.
Well, we have one other prelim that I don't know how I drew this draw.
Yeah, you might want to get
Zach.
Your car and start driving now.
I'm heading to Narraguagus. Heading to Narraguagus today for the number 5 Narraguagus hosting number 12 Searsport girls. That game starts at 5:30. So I'm going to have to, like Zach said, I'm going to have to get going here pretty quickly. But this is a really, really tough draw for this Searsport girls team. I mean, I'm going through the stats here and looking over this Narraguagus team. First of all, they're 17-1. I mean, how many 5 seeds are 17-1? That's crazy to me.
It's like Waterville for Class B girls is like 18-0, and they're the 3 seed.
Right. Sometimes it's weird the way these things can shake out. But Narraguagus, they lost their first game of the regular season. They rattled off 17 in a row. Let's see, Narraguagus, they're averaging, just to give you guys, Narraguagus is averaging 71.8 points per game. Searsport's averaging 41.5.
Yeah. There's a pretty big discrepancy there.
That's
the
Narraguagus has scored in the 90s twice, and they've scored in the 80s 6 times. I mean, that is going to be.
Some scores on that team.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I talked to Mel Grant about this matchup, and he said he saw some film on Narraguagus. Said they're in-your-face defenders. They really need to take care of the ball, not feel rushed, and most importantly, they need to hit everything.
Yeah,
they need to have
the Alley sisters need to have a pretty
Michaela
big
and
game.
Mackenzie Alley. They're almost every single night they're the 1 and 2 scorers. You mix Ashton Wells in there as well, but they all have to have the game of their lives, and they have to hope that Narraguagus really doesn't play very well.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to ask for going to Harrington. A place like this is the second longest road trip they've had all year because they also go to Shed. That's in Eastport. So it's their second longest road trip of the year. And it's gonna be a lot for them to expect to go up there and pull an upset, especially in a partisan crowd.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly. And that place will probably be pretty packed too.
Searsport, you better hope you travel well tonight and travel home safely because we're going to be getting some snow tonight.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So if I had to venture a guess, I think Narraguagus is probably going to win that one.
Yeah.
But it's like you like to remind me all the time. Nobody called that Oceanside Hamden upset a few years ago, and
Besides
you called
me,
it. So
I called it. Everybody.
That's right.
Bow down to me. That was me.
So all right. So now we're going to move on to the quarterfinals. We've got a lot of quarterfinal games going on. The first games we're going to tackle are the 2 Vinyl Haven boys and girls teams. What's interesting about this is that I've talked about this before, is normally these teams would not have, number 6 Vinyl Haven, the boys would have made it. They would have been the last seed in. But normally it's just the top 6. But for Class D South, they made it the top 8 of 9 teams because they didn't want to penalize the number 1 team or the number 2 team and say, hey, you guys don't get a quarterfinal game because we only took 6.
Yeah.
So you look at these, because we'll start with the Vinyl Haven girls. They're the number 7 seed. They're going to face number 2 Temple Academy Monday, February 18th, 10 a.m. This is going to be, Vinyl Haven girls, they're the 2-time defending regional champions. And 2 years ago, they won the first ever state championship in the history of that school in any sport. That's great.
This
They've
year,
graduated all of those girls.
I think except for Amber.
Yeah, Amber Shane.
Yeah,
Amber Shane and Hannah Newton. She was also no. Amber Shane graduated.
Oh, did she? Okay.
Hannah Newton is the girl that they had left, and she was their bench player, and she's a nice little player. But it's going to be tough for them to unseed. Team. Yeah, they're a very young team, and they don't have a big team either. Obviously, you're going up against a Temple team. They've won 14 games. That's going to be a tough road ahead.
Yeah, it really is. Vinyl Haven's averaging 28.3 points per game, while Temple's averaging 49.3 points per game. They played twice during the year. Temple won both times, 54-19 back on December 29th, and then 59-31 on January 21st.
I've seen crazier upsets. I have. Like, I'm not saying that couldn't happen, but it's kind of like we were talking about the Searsport and Irriguegas game. They're going to have to play their best game of the season and hope that Temple goes up there and maybe lays an egg.
Yeah, Vinyl Haven's given up 46.8 points per game to opponents this year.
So we'll flip over to the boys game, which is if you're traveling from Vinyl Haven, it's good news because these games are back to back.
That's true.
The number 6 Vinyl Haven boys, they're going to face number 3 Valley Monday, February 18th at 11:30. Cavaliers. It's kind of interesting. Cavaliers have beat the Vikings 3 times this season. All 3 games were at Valley.
That's weird.
I don't know. Usually, maybe one of those games would be at a neutral site, or one would be at Vinyl Haven, 2 would be at Valley, or some sort of flip-flop. But it's kind of odd.
That's a heck of a bus ride too for Vinyl Haven.
I'm guessing
Not counting the ferry ride.
I'm guessing it had something to do with the North Haven teams having to drop out. The North Haven boys especially, so maybe they had to pick up another game and they just had to go to Valley. It might have been something like that. But regardless, all these games were lopsided wins for Valley. It's going to be another tough road for Vinyl Haven. The one interesting thing about this is that Vinyl Haven coach Josh Miller and Valley coach Curtis Miller are cousins.
That's cool.
Which I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I was talking to Josh about it a little bit. He said in his high school yearbook, he was writing that he just wanted to beat Valley in something. Because back then was when Valley was in the midst of that 100+ game win streak. They won 4 Class D titles in a row. I believe they lost to Valley last year in the playoffs. So we're going to hope that something magical can happen up there for the Vinyl Haven boys this year, where the girls have had such a successful run the last few years.
Yeah, it's going to have to, because Vinyl Haven's averaging 37 points per game, while Valley is averaging 60.7 points per game. So something's got to give there.
Cavaliers will likely be anything but.
Exactly.
In that game. All right, so let's jump in. We've got some A games and we've got some B games.
Yes, we do. Let's start with the A girls, because we have two girls.
Load it up.
2 girls teams in that one. We have Madomic Valley and Camden Hills in that one. Madomic is the 6th seed. They jumped to the 6th seed after beating Oceanside, and they actually got some help for, I forget who lost. Somebody else lost and allowed Madomic to jump up. And Camden sneaks in as the 8th seed. Camden's going to play Skowhegan. That is Friday night at 8:30. That's the late game. Mm-hmm. And Skowhegan is undefeated on the year and has throttled every single team that they have played, no matter who it has been, in A North or in A South. And they're probably a good bet to just pencil them in for the state championship game, because everybody they've beaten has, even Hamden Academy, who's the 2 seed, they still won by 20.
Right.
So it's. I know Skowhegan's going to win, but you never know. That's why they play the games.
Well, no, I mean, and to that point, I mean, there was a couple years ago where the Madomic boys, they were the number 1 seed, and the Skowhegan boys came in as the 8th seed and knocked them out.
Exactly.
I mean, those things
That's
do
true.
happen. They do happen.
Madomic was undefeated, and Panther fans know that and want to forget about that.
So we're so just real quick on the Camden Skowhegan game. Camden, they're averaging 42.1 points a game. Skowhegan 55.7. Skowhegan, they've kind of been all over the map. There'll be games where they score a ton of points, and then I'm going through the heel point standings, and Skowhegan beat Winslow 22-14. just a few games ago.
Remember that,
So crazy things can happen.
You sure you weren't checking the football heel points there, Mark?
I'm just saying if they can. I'm going to give you guys a scouting report. If they can hold Skowhegan to 22 points, they have a really good chance of winning this game.
And Cassie Cruel can score 23. They're good.
Yeah, Cassie Cruel, obviously, having the Cruel sisters back this year. I mean, the Windjammer girls, they didn't make the playoffs last year. Cassie and Kaylin Cruel, they're both terrific athletes. Having them back is huge.
Very young team there, too.
Yeah, and Cassie has been the catalyst as far as scoring points. She's going to have a big game for them to do something. Like Camden, really, they need to keep this game low scoring. If they can keep it in the 40s, which Skowhegan has been prone to score in the 40s. I mean, like they've got a shot, but I mean, it's not. I mean, like you said, I mean, this team's undefeated. Skowhegan is undefeated. I mean, it's going to be tough.
The thing is with these neutral site games, you never know how a team is going to react to the openness of Augusta or Bangor, because it's not like you go to a home team gym and the basket's right against the wall. It's open, so your depth perception's a little bit thrown off when you're shooting a three, because there's nothing to really gauge how far the basket is away from anything, too. So you never know. Plus, you have the environment, the fans, and the lights and everything. You just never know how someone's going to play.
It's also kind of give people an idea of like a like-minded opponent these two teams have played. Skowhegan, they put up 82 in an 82-33 win over Erskine Academy. Camden also beat Erskine Academy 51-38. So I mean, Skowhegan, like they certainly have the power to score in bunches, and they certainly can do that. So Camden, obviously, I feel like I'm a broken record saying this because like it's kind of a weird year because a lot of times we have a lot of really strong teams, but I feel like a lot of these lower seeded teams, they've got to play their best games of the season.
They really do.
And hope that these higher seeded teams, maybe stumble a little bit out of the gate.
Yep.
Not so much here with this next game, Madomic Valley and Lawrence girls. I mean, you look at this, we've got Madomic at 11-7, we got Lawrence at 12-6. These two teams only played once, and Lawrence won that game 69-51. That was January 12th in Waldoboro. But you look at this. I mean, Lawrence, they haven't been killing teams offensively. I mean, they've scored 69 twice this season. Those were season highs, and one of them was against Madomic.
Yeah, it was. Madomic has 7 games this year divided by 10 points or fewer. In those games, they're 3-4 with an 11-7 record. So, and Madomic has beaten the teams they needed to beat to get into the playoffs, but they've also lost to the teams that have been better than them. Like Lawrence and Hamden Academy and Brunswick, and they split with Gardner during the beginning of the year.
But you're right. They took care of business. They took care of the business they were supposed to take care of. They didn't play down to their opponents. They had some tough games. Yep. But I think one of the keys for Madomic is to get up there, get some points on the board quickly. I mean, because Coach Ryan McNally and these girls, none of them they've never won a playoff game. Any of the girls on this roster. I mean, I'm trying to think, but we might be talking like back in the Alana Vos years, the last time the Madomic girls won a playoff game, and that's getting close to 10 years now.
Yeah, it is.
So I mean, you gotta. I talked to Ryan, and he said that this Lawrence team, they're athletic, they're well-rounded. You can't just focus on containing just one player. They can kind of spread it around. Got to limit turnovers, not allow second chance opportunities, kind of value the ball, take advantage of all their possessions. But if they can get up there and they can get a little bit of a lead and kind of just take a couple deep breaths, kind of get their feet underneath them and relax a little bit.
And get their opponent off their heels too. Like what's happening here? We've got to start getting things going.
I think
they got a chance.
I think that's going to be a big key for them. I think this is a very winnable game for Madomic when you really look at it. If they go up there, I mean they've got a lot of they've got Sadie Cohen, they've got Abby Lash, they've got Lydia Simmons, Maddie White. A lot of those girls can play. They can take care of the ball. They can rebound. They can slash.
They've all played a lot of basketball together. Too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Madomic win this game. I mean, look at this. I mean, Lawrence is 12-6. Madomic is 11-7.
And they average almost exact points per game.
And Madomic is
a couple points more.
Madomic's at 45-8, and Lawrence is at 48-7. So I mean, I think that's a winnable game for Madomic. They could definitely go up there and do that.
I think so too.
We got a couple other. Let's see. We've got two more quarterfinal games to talk about. Let's stay at the Augusta Civic Center. We've got number 8 Madomic Valley boys. They've got number 1 Coney. Now, this game is Saturday, February 16th, 9:30 p.m. This is the late game for sure.
At 9 o'clock.
Which is what interesting about this is Madomic. They were locked into the 7th seed, and then there was one more game that needed to be played: Mount Blue and Brewer. Brewer wins that game, and that actually knocks Madomic down a peg. But if you look at it, I mean, they're actually really benefited from that.
It's a good thing
because they would have played Hamden Academy, and Hamden Academy is probably the toughest team in Class A North, even though they're the 2nd seed. Coney kind of snuck up there and got the number 1 seed. But Madomic and Coney, they've excuse me, they only played once this year. That was a 62-58 win for Coney, and that was in Augusta. So when you think about it, if you're Nick DePatsy and you're these kids, you're thinking like, wow, sure, I'm glad to have fallen down to 8 there.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about you falling down, if Madomic has a bunch of close losses and close wins this year, especially that stretch in January. On January 4th, they lost to Erskine Academy 47-43. They lost to Coney 62-58 at Coney, and then they lost to Lawrence 47-46. And that was 3 straight games that they lost by those scores. So that really knocked them down. And I think if they had won those games, where would they be? What seed would they be? They'd be probably a top 4 seed and be playing somebody else from the bottom.
No, you're right.
But they've also had close wins. They beat Messalonsky. These are both at the end of the year. On January 31st, they beat Messalonsky 52-50, and then they beat Mount Ararat 53-50.
On that Ryan Creamer buzzer beater.
That you were at, yeah, and back on February 5th. So, I mean, where would they be if they had those 2 losses? They'd be out because Messalonsky didn't make the playoffs.
What I've heard about Coney is that they're very hot and cold. Like, if they could go out there and they could hit 20 threes,
there's Simon McCormick
they could go out
too.
there and they could hit
That
5.
kid can play.
The Simon McCormick kid, I remember him from they played Oceanside a couple years ago up there, and he impressed me as a sophomore. And he's a senior now, and that's going to be tough for them. Another point about this: last 4 games of the year for Coney, they went 4-0. They lost to Brewer by 1 point, and then they finished the season 4-0. They scored 86, 97, 93, and 73. So I mean, they're going to have to really clamp down defensively. But like I've been doing this for 12, 13 years now, and the one consistent thing that I see a lot is Nick DePatsy gets every ounce
Just look at last year.
out of these kids.
I
mean,
last year's seed, they went to the regional championship.
Last year's team was not a great team. They were good. They were solid. You know what I mean? But you're right. Like he knew how to coach against Brewer. He shut them down in that semifinal game, and and he kind of got to hand the game, and he kind of knew that was going to happen. You know what I mean? But he got them as far as he could have got them. I think that this is, as far as an 8-1 matchup goes, Madomic could
upset Central
could make something happen, but Coney's averaging 76-4 and Madomic is averaging 59-5 a game. So obviously you're going to have to have Gabe Allaire have a big game offensively. The freshmen, Trevor Brown and Pat McKinney. A lot of those Brown and McKinney, like they're fantastic freshmen. And Bickmore, and they've never played a game at the Augusta Civic Center.
Yep.
And there's a lot to be said for that, going up there for the first time. Not just the loud crowds, but the crazy dimensions.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you can shoot a 3 and think it's going in, and it's an air ball.
Exactly.
And that can happen really easily.
That.
So like getting their feet underneath them quickly, and kind of establishing themselves early, especially those young players. That's going to be a big part of it for them.
It would not surprise me at all to see Madomic win this game.
No, I think they could too. I absolutely think they could.
Now one more game to get to.
Here we go. We're going over to the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor. We've got number 4 Oceanside and number 5 MCI, and that game's going to be Saturday, February 16th. 10:35 in the morning. These two split, and
This is gonna be a good game.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be the best game of the first round. I think, no question.
This is gonna be like the Winslow Oceanside game last year, where Winslow and Oceanside played.
Yeah,
and they split.
You knew, and then it was just right down to the buzzer. Obviously, these two teams have split. Oceanside won 69-41 in Rockland, and then MCI won 58-54. Up there in Pittsfield. And I spoke to Jim Leonard about this game too, and he said, if he's the coach, the big thing they have to do, they have to try to figure out a way to contain Cooper Workala.
Yeah,
he's scoring 25 points a game.
He'll be first team all conference.
Yeah, he's a very, very tall, capable point guard. He can slash, he can dish. But the big thing about that is containing Workala is one thing, but they've got Jack Lombardo, they've got Trevor Reed, they've got Amos Anderson, they've got all these capable offensive players that can step up and handle the workload. Lombardo and Reed, they can score in droves, and Amos Anderson, he's got like a nice little mid-range game, and he scores a lot of his points down and dirty off offensive putbacks and things like that. So there are lots of ways that Oceanside can score, but Workala is the catalyst.
Yeah, Workala is one of the best players in probably the state, by far. Easily said that. And this Oceanside, I look at Oceanside, and then I look at Madomic, and they're very similar in the way their seasons played out, because they had close wins. Oceanside had close wins. On December 11th, 66-60 over Maranacook. I think that was the first game of the year, or second game of the year. And then they beat Belfast in overtime, which was a game that probably shouldn't have been as close looking at the final Hero Point standings, whereas Belfast only had 3 wins on the year. They beat Belfast on December 28th, 63-56. They beat MDI 50-48 on January 4th.
That was a hell of a game.
Yeah. Yep. That was worth a lot of Hero Points considering MDI is the 3 seed. and then they beat Winslow 61-55 on January 15th. But they also had close losses. That triple overtime one to Herman at home. Imagine if they had beat Herman.
Yeah, if they had beaten Herman, they'd probably be the 2 seed.
Yeah, and then they lost by 9 at Herman, 52-43, and then they lost to Maranacook, 52-50 or 51 or something like that.
These two teams both have quality wins. I mean, MCI beat Caribou. Caribou's the number 2 seed overall. Oceanside also beat MDI. They're the number 3 seed overall. They also have wins over each other. I mean, these two teams, took care of business and beat the teams they were supposed to beat and did what they needed to do to get here and be in this spot. But the one thing that I'd be remiss to not bring up, Oceanside is winless. Cross Insurance Center.
True.
They have never won a game there, and it's so weird. They've been so snake bitten there. I mean, there was the team 4 or 5 years ago. They were the number 1 seed. They went in and they lost to Herman, who was the 8 seed. Lost to them in overtime. And then they lost a tough game against Winslow one year, and then Winslow again last year. But then let's just talk about that quick 2-year window where they went to Class A. All they did is win a regional championship and go to another regional final. They only lost 1 game while they were playing up in Augusta. Meanwhile, this team just can't are they considering can they sacrifice a live chicken in the locker room? Can they do it? Can they do something like that?
I don't think so. I think that's against MPA rules.
I'm going to talk to Dick DeRost about that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think there are rules about that yet.
I don't think so.
Maybe soon.
Yeah.
But obviously, this is going to be this game is going to be probably the bread and butter game of the first round. So we've got a lot of stuff happening. Thank you all very much for being patient with us. We had a lot to get through. We're at the 35-minute mark. It's probably the longest show we've ever done.
Yeah.
But obviously, we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and getting as many kids and as many teams involved in shows like this because
basketball comes once a year.
Basketball comes once a year, and you guys are the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. So we want to try to get as much out there for you as we can. And next week, we're going to have a lot of playoff results. We're going to have a lot of playoff videos. Zach and I will be at these games, photos, videos, stories. You can go to knox.villagesoup.com, waldo.villagesoup.com to get all of this information. Or you can just stick around and watch our ugly mugs next week, and we'll tell you what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Until then, I'm Mark, this is Zach, and this has been The Press Box.